Welcome everyone to our wrap-up show. I'm Axel Threlfall, editor-at-large with Reuters. This is a really good opportunity at the end of every day to take stock of what we've heard during the day, really pick apart some of the announcements and then throw it ahead to tomorrow. Just before I introduce our guests, let me run you through some of the headlines that I saw on the Reuters wire and some of the other news organizations just a short while ago. We woke up, of course, to the 130 trillion of private capital that Mark Carney announced. Several announcements from the UK Chancellor today, new requirements for UK companies to publish net zero transition plans. He's also convened over 30 countries to back the creation of a new global climate reporting standard by the IFRS. On developing countries, we had bits and pieces on that. The Chancellor expects the $100 billion finance target is going to be met by 2023, I think is what he said today. John Kerry came out. These are just headlines I'm picking out. Remember, John Kerry came out and said 60% chance of capping global temperatures at 1.5 degrees. And just a short while ago, Pravin Gordhan, for us actually on one of these shows, he is South Africa's Minister of Public Enterprises, of course, said climate change is a common project for humanity. It's counterproductive to play geopolitical games. It was an important comment, that one, and we will talk about that as well. Let me introduce our panel. Helen Whately is the UK Secretary to the Treasury. Very nice to see you, Minister. Sarah Gordon next to me from the Impact Investing Institute. And Lord Mayor-elect Vincent Keaveny is on the end. Thank you very much indeed to all of you for joining us. We haven't got long, so let's kick it off. It was grand from the Chancellor, Minister. Is the UK really setting the pace internationally, do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'd just say, just taking a step back, because this is the end of the first ever finance day at a COP. That is a big deal, and I think it's shown how finance is now mainstream in climate change now mainstream in finance. And if you think back to Paris setting the ambition, this COP is very much about delivering the ambition, and specifically on the finance side, about delivering the finance that's needed for the global net zero transition. Now it's been a huge conversation that's been taking place today, clearly in the build-up to today as well.
Yeah.
And
okay, and of course the finance, the 130 trillion was extremely exciting, and 130 trillion plus is what we were told this morning. Of course, the government would say that. What do you think of the announcements from the Chancellor today? Very grand, very big, but they really need to put their money where their mouth is, right?
Yes, and not just the government, obviously the 130 trillion as well. I mean, in a way, what I think was the most exciting about today's announcements were the sort of follow-up activities after them, and particularly the sort of the idea of setting a goal. Companies having to do net zero plans from next year. So all UK listed companies, publicly listed companies, and all financial services industries companies, if I've got that correct, are going to have to publish their transition to net zero plans from next year. And they're actually going to be held to account for those plans. And I think that's the critical thing, is that there will be a transition plan task force, which we were actually talking about on the panel just before this, which will set a gold standard, one hopes, for those transition plans. So companies that have said up until now, and many companies have been really serious about their commitment to net zero, but some have said 2030 is quite a long way away for many chief executives. 2050 is even further. But this requirement to publish plans and to be held to account, I think, is really significant.
What sort of reaction do we have from some of the corporates? I don't know if you've spoken to any, but what sort of reaction do you imagine we will have from some of the corporates?
Well, I have spoken to some of the corporates today, and I think, put it this way, a lot of the financial services industry actors who are here in COP are here because they are either doing or already doing a lot of this, or they are hoping to do more. And I think there is a genuine, there is not just a genuine wish in many sort of C-suites, both of the corporates and financial services, to do the right thing on this. There's also, let's face it, a competitive argument as well.
Course, yeah.
I mean, it is becoming increasingly recognised, I think, that if you are not on the front foot, not just on net zero, but on the biodiversity crisis, on the social challenges, you're actually you're a laggard in the market and you're going to be outcompeted.
Yep. All right, Vincent, you kick off with your Lord Mayor. What do we call it? The
mayoral theme.
Tenure next week. You've got a year in the job. Clearly, the city is watching very closely what's going on here. We had Howard Davies on this morning talking about central banks and central banks' role in all of this. Where do you want to see the financial sector go during your year?
Well, I think we really have to recognise just the catalytic moment that we've seen with the announcement of the 130 trillion. I think that we shouldn't underestimate the significance of that moment. And I think it's significant in two respects. One is it's an enormous amount of money. Now, quite what it represents and how it's deployed is a big question, and a big question that will have to be addressed. But it's a big sum of money, and finance is at the table, and it's actually on the table for this COP. I mean, I think that is a real game changer. For the whole climate change challenge. It's also the other thing that's happening, and I think Sarah touched on in her comments a moment ago, is that people are talking here. There's real conversations happening about the way business is being done, about the challenges that the industry is facing. And I think some of those conversations are actually going to flow through.
And importantly, they're talking about the right things. They're talking about moving this process forward. Because we've been talking for a very long time.
They're talking about really granular things. They're talking about some of the challenges around. We've touched on some of these technical issues like taxonomy and that sort of thing. And people are talking about this stuff in a way that I don't think has happened before. This isn't any longer high-level regulatory discussions. These are financial institutions, these are corporates actually starting to talk about how they make sense of this and how they actually make this work in the real world. And I think that's a big change. And
Minister Nick Hurd, chair of G7 Impact Task Force, was talking to us at lunchtime today. He was talking about, and it's critical the need to keep the public on side as well. And he said, we're about to do the difficult bit. People really need to see the benefits of this transition and link it to prosperity. I'm sure you agree with it. How much of a priority is that for the government, and how is the government going to keep these people on side?
I think this is really true. We have got to take the public with us. Clearly, we know that there are some people who absolutely want us to be going further and faster, but others who are concerned about the cost of making the transition. Actually, I attended a really interesting event with a group of UK cities represented today, and we were talking about how this is a huge opportunity. And the opportunity that there is for us in the UK and globally through the green transition and all the new jobs that are coming with it. And so actually that's a way is seizing the opportunity, but also clearly being mindful of the costs to some individuals and helping people through if they're affected.
What about, though, I mean, you touched on this, we talk about the consumer, what about the potential backlash from the energy crunch we've seen? Queuing up for petrol, across the country, gas prices up. Is there a worry somewhere that, as we make this shift, that is going to be the norm, at least for the next 20 years?
I wouldn't say that at all. I mean, clearly we have to make the transition in a way that means that we can be confident about the resilience of our energy supplies. But actually, one reaction I've heard to the fuel crisis was, well, this is another argument for us to be moving towards renewables and increasing our own energy security in our UK supply through renewable sources. So actually you can see it as a positive rather than a negative there.
Well, and localising energy. I mean, it's a big, and what you were saying about talking to UK cities and them seeing this as opportunities as well. I mean, I think it's, there are enormous opportunities to get jobs in, for example, renewable energy in places in the UK which have been historically underinvested in. So I think, there are real opportunities there. And I mean, the Impact Task Force that Nick was talking to you about, I mean, which we at the Impact Investing Institute co-lead and which Vincent is on as well. I mean, one of the things precisely that we're looking at is providing more replicable financing vehicles for that transition, that just transition that includes those jobs and those skills and access to infrastructure and all those other important things that are critical actually to get the public acceptance of the transition to net zero.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's certainly going to be a big focus in my mayoralty as well. The S piece in the ESG agenda. We've had this huge focus on the E over the last 12 months running up to COP26, but I think we've got to widen that lens out and start looking at those the social issues as well, very much along the lines of the work that the Impact Investing Institute is doing, the G7 Impact Task Force is doing. Once we begin talking about transition at all, the just transition elements that we've been touching on for the last minute or two become critical to the discussion, and we've got to get the answers to some of those right as well.
Tomorrow, of course, I'm very, very wary on the time. Got about a minute left. Tomorrow's Energy Day, of course. On the show here in the morning, by the way, we're going to be talking about philanthropy. We're going to be talking about energy. We're going to be talking about taxonomy. So a lot of that stuff. But on the philanthropic piece, really quick word from you. How hopeful are you that well, we've seen a lot of things already this week, but how hopeful are you that this is a really, really important piece of this?
I'm incredibly hopeful. I mean, we're working with a number of charities on their endowments and where they invest their endowments, and there's enormous enthusiasm for obvious reasons among charities and other philanthropic actors. I mean, you know, large foundations, for example, to invest their money with impact. What we need is more training and support to facilitate that momentum. But I mean, the momentum is really here, and I think if today has shown anything, it is. I mean, people talk a lot about a tipping point, and it's an overused phrase, but it kind of does feel like a bit of a tipping point.
Yeah. All right. Final word, Minister. What's the mood in the government on the back of it? You know, we've done 3 days now. We've got a few more days. There was a lot of worry beforehand that this is going to be a bit of a damp squib. And so, what's the whisper in the corridors of government and Downing Street and Parliament? What's the mood music is the phrase I use. So what is it really, honestly?
Well,
people saying it's going well.
Yesterday I was in Parliament and today I've been here. But I would say, I definitely feel like there was maybe some pessimism a few days ago, and now it feels really upbeat, is that this COP is really delivering, really leading the way. We set out that we would, the UK wants to lead the world, particularly on greening finance, and this feels like today it's really happening. Okay, well, let's hope it ends the end of next week. Let's hope it still feels like that. Thank you very much indeed to all of you. I'm sorry we had to make this so short. Helen Whately, Vincent, Keaveny and Sarah Gordon. As I said, we've got a show tomorrow morning. 8, join us for that. Really, really super lineup there. Philanthropy, energy, the whole energy mix, and we'll take another look at taxonomies and the whole shifting sands of regulation and all of that stuff. It'll be a great show. We will see you tomorrow morning.